Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be starting up our AAR for Venice. We're going to be a little bit more methodical with this. We do have notes, a couple of pages of notes, and we are going to be recording this in segments and then stitch it together for a final video. Now, this is on a little bit of a newer version, so there's a lot of balance differences, a lot of things have been nerfed, not that many things have been buffed, and in particular, Venice has a very, very interesting defining characteristic, which is that it is a merchant republic. Now, taking a closer look at this government reform, which is, by the way, not visible anywhere on their Tinto flavor, and it is a very strong and interesting government reform that you start out with, or you could slot in. It's a major government reform, and you cannot slot it out. If you are a merchant republic, is you get minus 50% build cost in other countries. There's another one that is a generic one that gives you minus 20% build cost in foreign countries. This total is minus 70% build cost in foreign countries, and we have special buildings like the Fondaco, and there's another trade-oriented building that you can build in foreign countries that most other people can't. And so stacking these two together, getting minus 70% build cost, and then just letting it rip into other people's countries does seem to be the main idea. And I think that overall at the point we're at right now, it seems like very, very slow to start. But once you get going, it seems a little bit cracked because your subjects are foreign countries. You can build in your subjects and you can build buildings for under 2 ducats or under 3 ducats as a result of you stacking a bunch of building cost reduction and then them sometimes having building cost reduction. Sometimes they have capital economy values. I think they get released with your values when you release a subject, and so if you have capital economy, that's another minus 20% for minus 90%. And so we are seeing a bit of a modifier stacking theme here. After doing this AAR and kind of reporting on this a little bit, this might get nerfed, but as it stands now, it's very strange. I don't know how strong we think Venice is, because in the abstract, I think actually trade is a little bit weak right now. So you have this really, really strong kind of advantage in one sphere, and then a little bit of a weakness in that I think trade is relatively weak. Although, per the math, the way things work, income from trade is effectively more valuable than income from tax. The thing is, you just don't usually generate that much income from trade, although we've been noticing higher numbers with this run. The reason you don't generate higher income from trade, generally speaking, is that, the reason why trade is worth more is because when you increase tax income, you increase the size of your tax base. Your income scales with your economic base, which is a combination of tax base and trade expenses. So what this means is that, your expenses scale with this. So when you get more tax income, you also increase your expenses. When you get more trade income, you increase your expenses, but not by as much. And so trade income's worth maybe 2 to 3 times as much. So with that said, we will start getting into talking through this. All right, so to kick things off, we start with a little bit of land here. We start with some land over here, just kind of little bits of one singular province, and then we have a little bit like deeper down into the Mediterranean, closer to Byzantium. We have a subject as an island, but this is really kind of the main idea, and I think it's roughly 50%, like somewhere between 30 and 50% of our pops are going to be in here. As far as, infrastructure goes and how we think of the map, in here, we're subtropical, the other side is Mediterranean. In the long term, we probably want to move our capital over here, but we also have marshland, which is kind of rough because pushing control through the marshland, it does suffer a little bit of penalty, and we don't start out with any unique type of boat, trade boat, which is really unfortunate, because so this means that functionally speaking, we're really not going to be able to make very good use of any territory really at a high level until we get up onto barks, and even then, I think the maritime progress is actually way slower now. I'm not 100% sure, but I do think you're getting it a bit slower. There is a bunch of farmlands up here and then grasslands, so eventually once we start pushing in, it is going to be pretty good. And per the resources, there are some good resources as well. I think this is no longer silk, this is fish, and it's fish on both the island and also the coast here. This is 2 locations, but for the most part, a lot of this is kind of correct, and the thing it is now, there is 1 wool right under here underneath the silver, but the silver is going to be a big one for our run. But what we are going to be looking to do is, in terms of our plan, try and get a lot of this coast stuff and get it nice and slow with subjects first. And so it's 1.7 to build in our like starting subject. We start with a subject in Trieste, and so we start with building kind of a lot in there because 9 building in our province versus 1 building in there, it's a nice trade-off, and so we go for that. We go Diplo focus for the first time when the next age hits. Or actually, another thing first. We have a ton of negative events as Venice, like from the get-go, that just really, really crush you and cost a lot of money, and you can either choose to lose a lot of pops or lose a lot of money. So we get into debt early. Our margins aren't very good. We don't have a lot of crown power, and so it does feel like we're kind of gummed up and stymied. But with that said, when we hit the next stage, we go Diplo focus for the first time. Kind of regret it. We saw that there was subject income 2.5%, and I was thinking, hey, maybe we really lean into the subjects, this type of thing, try and stack subject income, and try and extract a lot on the back end of the game with colonies, because in the final age now, you do see a huge buff for colonial income. So that is going to be a bit of a thing. And so we do expand textiles a little bit in Venice, and then we just look to pay off our debt in terms of mostly what we're doing here, because the fine cloth is so profitable because there's the huge shortage of it at game start. We do expand that kind of home, but we get banking in 1344, which is a pretty early kind of run of it, because if you're in Italy, you do get institutions the fastest, and this is good because we're going to need banking in order to get barks. And following that, we get the Black Death. Most of our pops are in Venice. We have one city down here, and we have, some more pops over here. But these, little islands and this type of stuff, a lot of these have, 3, 4, 6,000 pops, so really not that significant. 150,000 in Venice at game start, something like this. And so we were really successful in the Black Plague. Only a third of our pops died, which is a really good showing because we built hospital in both of our urban areas, and then we also built a pest... the pest control thing where you are expelling people, the special building, which I think gives another minus 25% or plus 25% disease resistance on top of what the hospital gives. And so really kind of nice that happened, but we don't really have a lot of pops to work with anyways. We didn't really save that many pops, but in terms of ratio, that might be the highest number of pops that we've ever been able to save. And then we see the AI be actually a little bit more aggressive than it's been in the past. We are part of the Ghibellines and Gulefs thing, and we were not really looking to ally anyone. We were looking to save our Diplo capacity, this type of stuff. We should have allied someone, and Verona came in and they conquered us, basically. We were just extremely losing the war. We couldn't do the trick where we give them 1 ducat to leave the war, and what we had to do is we had to restart. So we restarted, we took all the same steps, and this time we allied Milan. And so everything looked roughly the same, except we executed a little bit better on these things. But I did think that was interesting to note that you do have to be a little bit more careful now because the AI is going to be in a little bit of a better position, it seems, to go after you. So we were being careless because we thought it didn't matter, and then it mattered. Another thing is we've played a lot of big countries, and Venice just is very vulnerable at game start. So this seems good enough. We also have 35% at this point in time of our pops in our capital. And so as far as the tech goes, we eventually get the counting house, which gives plus 33% crown power. We build it in the capital, and then our control goes up by quite a bit. I think it went up by 3% or something like this, which is really good because trade income scales with control. We don't have a lot of control at this point. There is a council of 10 or this type of thing that we should have slotted out really kind of very early, but we didn't. And I think that is really kind of squeezing you down. Buildings have maintenance down, so escaping the point where your margin is small, like hitting this escape velocity thing, does seem quite a bit harder. But this council of 40, I think we should have given up. I think the trade capacity baited us into holding this for a lot longer than we should have, and the fact that it's giving you this crown power malice at the beginning is particularly bad. We're planning on slotting this back in at some point in time, but for the beginning, it just didn't seem that good. And currently, our other government reform, we have 3 government reforms, I think. Our other government reform is the one that decreases cost in other people's buildings. Or maybe we just have the 2 right now. No, we still have Council of 40 in, so we probably should have slogged that out for control reasons. But okay, we do have a fight with Verona, and we have a little bit of taking this stuff. What we do is, if I recall correctly, we hired a bunch of mercs, which were expensive, or a few mercs, and we went after them. We got Milan to help us. We won a couple battles, and then we pieced out very quickly. You can get 50% war score from battles, and the sieges I didn't want to drag out super long. Actually, we didn't hire mercs. We hired mercs when we were trying to save the run, but with Milan, I think we didn't hire the mercs. We just waited for Milan to come in. Some combination of this, but we take the rest of this province up here, and then we vassalize Padua, or Verona had already annexed Padua. We take one little snippet of Padua, and we make a subject out of this little location up here. And the reason why we took one section of Padua is so that we could release Padua, and then now Padua has claims on these other two locations. And so we use the nerfed CB from the Parliament, which now gives war score cost, increased cost on war score. I think it's either 25% more war score cost. We use that to grab a little section of Padua, grab the rest of our province, not go too crazy, and then with Padua released, now we'll get access to Padua's CBs, which gives us the minus 25% war score cost reduction. We've been doing this for some time now. That way we don't have to use our Parliament juice. Parliament is a little bit slower, you don't get as much juice, and so we've been doing that for a while now. So we also use the increase control cabinet action, because this is all one province, to kind of scroll up a little bit here, or scroll down rather. I do think this is the locations map mode. Apologies. In the province map mode, you can see that Venice is a pretty big province. There's 1, 2, 3. I think this is like another 4. There's like 6 or 7 locations. So we start using increased control, and this way we will have a lot more crown power, because for every control you are under 100, you get a crown power malice. We maybe should have been using increased control from the start, but with this additional territory, it becomes a lot more important. And then with our other cabinet action, we are incorporating them. I do think we were using stabilized government as our second cabinet action before, and we were pushing values, so we've switched over to do a little bit more. But after this, I think we will either be doing stabilized government after we incorporate these guys, and then also maybe go back to pushing values. We don't have too much values to push. We also, in 1365, get access to the Barks technology, and we have currently 74 naval, and so we are starting to push a little bit of control to these other areas down here, but it's not really that effective, and it won't be effective for some time. Quite a lot longer than I thought. At this point in time, we should really be building a lot more of these trade center things in other people's locations. They give like plus 2.2 trade capacity and plus 0.1 maritime, and the maritime eventually will give us trade advantage, and so we want to eventually seize control of other people's markets, and so probably should have gotten the ball rolling on this. I didn't think we had more power projection than a lot of these other countries. We do, and I have no idea what the source is, so that part is a little bit unclear for us. So but we do have the power projection to build in like Naples and this type of stuff. We just have to have good relations, but we weren't aware of this at that time. So we do have Barks. In 1369, we get armories, and we want to kind of have a little bit of a standing army before we go after Verona again. Ferrara has started to expand, really consolidate quite a few territories, and they're allied with Verona here. And so, yeah, we switch, or we get a parliament that is develop the interior, and this is an interesting one because it gives minus 20% buildings cost, and then if you succeed in it, it will give you progress towards land. If you fail it, it'll give you progress towards naval. So we intentionally fail the parliament, and then we have also in that parliament, we got to plus 100 for capital economy. We managed to cap that out. At least that's what I think this note means, which says cap eco. Again, we fight Verona again, and we take 50% war score off of winning just one battle. We can now take territories without needing to occupy the fort, and if we decide to occupy forts, it's going to take so much longer for us. And at that point, it might be faster just to do another war. We have the decreased war score cost production, war score cost because we have Padua here. And so what we end up going is for... Okay, no, wait, this is the war where we released Padua and Vizcara. Okay, never mind. Just kidding. This was another parliament war, so we waited on the parliament and we went for this province and Padua. So the following one, we are going to have this. In the previous war, we just grabbed the rest of, the province here for... I forget the name of the province. It's Venice province? I don't think it is. It is Venice province. So, and then you can see Vizcaya and Padua. This is going to be the territories that we effectively get claims on, or our subjects have claims on them, and we're just going to abuse the claims. We use the infrastructure efforts mission tree to eventually give us plus 0.5 trend to centralization. We combine this with using encourage values, the cabinet action for centralization, and having stacked a bunch of stuff that give us centralization trend. So we get over plus 1 trend, and then we push it all the way up to 100. So now we have 100 centralization, and so that's going to be pretty good. We annex Ragusa, which is down here. Which is a trade center. We had built up in Ragusa, and before we annex it, we queue a whole bunch of buildings, because the buildings are like 90% off right now. And so I think we built enough in Ragusa so that we had 50% more jobs than there were actually pops there, and we just kind of ignored Ragusa for like the rest of the game, other than occasionally building civilian infrastructure in there, or we've ignored them the rest of so far because they're they have more than enough jobs. And this is going to be a consistent theme as well here, where we are going to, if we have if we are going to be annexing someone, we are going to build a whole bunch of buildings in them first, because the cost of building a building is going to be like 10% what it is if they own it versus if we own it. And so because of that, or it's going to be like 10 to 15%. So we really do stack a whole bunch of buildings in there first, and then we will be annexing Ragusa. I also do think that annexing subjects is now slower too. So the subjects have been nerfed on a few fronts. One of them is that, and the other is going to be diplo capacity. But we go for another war with Verona, but we use it to subjugate Aquileia and Gorizia, rather than taking a bunch of Verona kind of territory. And our idea is that we're going to peace out fast and then wait for cannons and then have another go at Verona again. But now we're really, really strained on subject capacity at this point, because one of the things that scales is the size of your economy. And since we're building in our subjects, we don't have that big an economy. And so we start getting really, really pressured on the diplo capacity. So it's at this point... Sorry, wrong thing. It's at this point, I think we'd slot out Council of 40 in exchange for getting there's a diplomacy one that gives you a little bit more subject capacity, and I think we slot this out at this point for a diplo government reform. We're pretty strained. In 1381, we have 81 naval, and then we also decide to, before we go after Verona again, we attack Mantua. I think what we ended up doing is we take a little piece... Actually, I think we just straight up subjugated them. We used the CB for the Ghibellines and Gulef's journal entry, I believe, and with this, I don't remember what the war score cost was, but we just subjugate them, and we might have taken a little bit more from one of their allies. Something that we're kind of a little bit aggressive about is going to be that if there's someone we want to fight and we have a good CB, we will co-belligerize other people to see if we can, leapfrog our way into the war with the person that we want to be fighting. We also got a little bit of an interesting event, request for aid from Naples, and the reason, and with this, we have a thing where, okay, we're currently allied with Milan, but it wants us to give an ally with Naples, and in exchange for being locked in on ally, they will give us a full province in the Balkans. It's like another province down here. It's not all that valuable, but we decided to go for it. We break peace with Milan after waiting a little bit because we were on 48 favors, and so we wait until we get another 2, and then we use that to improve cultural relations so that it'll be cheaper for us to accept their culture later, and then now we're allied with Naples. And kind of a little bit later here is where we notice that, hey, we can build a bunch of trade stuff in Naples, and so a little bit later we will be going for that. But we get this request for aid interaction where we choose to be their ally in exchange for this, and we leave, I think we were on the side of the Gulefs, we leave for the Ghibellines, and we should have left a lot earlier. Because we wanted to play both sides of the thing, but instead, eventually the Gulefs win that situation, and what ends up happening is all of the Italy, as a consequence, since it wasn't a status quo, I think status quo keeps the HRE in, or maybe the other side needed to win, but all of Italy leaves the HRE, so that is going to be one of the consequences here. In terms of the exact amount of Diplo we had, I think after we subjugated these people, we were at 5.27 out of 3.5, whereas before, in previous versions, you could functionally ignore this completely. But okay. And we broke the alliance with Milan here. Alright, so with Friuli / Aquileia, I'm not sure why it's called Friuli sometimes, but with them we improve cultural opinion. Every 50 years that you can do this on your subject, and so we do this on them because they are currently our subject, as is, just for kind of a little bit of a rehash, as is Mantua and Padua here. What we end up doing is we queue like 30 or 40 buildings in Padua, and we start annexing them as well here. And once they get annexed, things are going to actually feel pretty good, and we feel like we have a bit of an eco liftoff here. Before, we've just been barely getting the margin we've been getting is like, think of it like this: if our expenses are 95, our income's 100, and we have like this 5% margin. And so we have this relatively small margin. We are getting quite a bit of money during parliaments because we tend to go for additional taxes, and that's where we accumulate and then we spend, and it's in our subjects that there is a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff in Venice proper, but we only have 2 urban areas, and we have not upgraded any new urban areas. We were kind of a little bit slow on the take for going after the silver, because we kept on thinking that we were trying to collapse prices of lumber and masonry, but then it turns out the collapsed price now only gives you a 50% discount. So the player, if the player is always collapsing the prices and the AI is not, the player effectively has 50% more expensive buildings now relative to before. But with that, we do start eventually expanding the silver. But something that we did happen, though, is masonry and lumber mills. Normally, these are like a 50 cost building. And these can't get diminished or decreased in price by price collapsing. We've built a ton of them in our subjects. And so we have a really, really good supply of lumber and masonry. The reason we got them so cheap in our subjects is because they only cost us 5 ducats. And so that's not buckets of ducats, that's almost nothing. So we feel like simultaneously very small and very strong. We annex Padua. We get 2 more urban areas, and these are urban areas where we have built a lot of stuff. So we just basically have an eco liftoff where we start to separate from our expenses, and our margins get very good, and we get a lot of churn, and we start being able to afford a lot of stuff that we had not previously been able to afford, and this feels really good. I think that we were making plus 50 ducats-ish, somewhere in this kind of realm, and then this is when, at this point, we kind of take a little bit of a look around because we're building so much stuff, and we see that we can, for 4 ducats, get trade offices in Naples. And we already talked about what those gave, but they do give 0.2 trade capacity and 0.1 maritime presence. Our maritime presence is not going so hot. I think we have like 60 or something. And we have like 5 to 10 barks, and they're really, really going slow, I feel like, relative to before, but we don't really know what the numbers are before, so it's a little bit difficult for us to tell. I have a note here that says Ferrara. Oh, we also built offices in Ferrara. Ferrara now has most of this coastline. So Ferrara is quite big. Florence, I think, is bugged because they have a civil war occupying them around now, I think. And it's been decades since then, and they're still occupied by the civil war. So I don't know exactly what's going on there. I do think it's a bug. But in terms of the lay of the land, in terms of power level, Verona has subjugated, I think, Lucca. And so Verona's pretty big, Ferrara is pretty big, Naples is pretty big, the Papal States is pretty big, and I think Siena has Florence has taken part of Siena, and Florence has also taken this, but Florence is perma-occupied. We can't declare on Florence, or if we declare on Florence, we won't be able to occupy them because they're occupied by the rebels, and we can't declare on the rebels because you can't declare on rebels, and Milan is over here consolidating this area. So the areas are starting to get pretty well consolidated, and we have this little chunk to ourselves over here for the most part. And so Italy is starting to, the lines are getting drawn in Italy in terms of power level. It is 1390, and we have 500,000 pops, so we're still really low on pops, but relative to our pop size, actually feel tremendously strong. We can hire mercs if we need to in the armies, and we're starting to build up a little bit of a standing army. We got armories 2 decades ago. We couldn't really build armories before that easily because the maintenance cost on the armories is really, really high. And so it would have eaten into our margin too much. But also, levies are a lot stronger now. The levies are stronger in the earlier ages, and I think they're just better than standing armies. The point is the standing army doesn't involve us wood chippering our troops or our pops. And so it's maybe a little bit of a mistake, the amount of, standing army we went for, but maybe it's a little bit of muscle memory. So, at this point, almost half of our income is from trade, and this is a big part of, I think, why we feel so rich. I think we were making like 65 ducats with 150 total income and a margin of like 40 to 50, something like this. And remember, income that is from trade is effectively more valuable, unless the tooltip is wrong. But this seems to be how the scaling works. We haven't like thoroughly checked the scaling of expenses, but the expenses don't seem to scale up with the trade income, and we're starting to get a lot more trade income. And I don't know if it's because we have a lot of trade influence or Naples, or because we annexed Padua, which had a lot of marketplaces. I'm guessing it's the latter, because the Naples stuff hasn't really started to take off at this point. And we are primarily exporting silver, so perhaps a little bit of it is us starting to actually expand out the silver, and we were probably a little bit delayed on that, and things could have been better. We do slot in a new government reform. I can't remember if we slot out something. I think we just got an additional slot, and it is harbor administration. It gives plus 10%, proximity through harbors or something like this, and now your disembark, where you disembark, also matters what your harbor capacity is, and so this is going to be good. And it also gives 10% dev in coastal locations, and we're going to have a ton of coastal locations, so that squares pretty well for us. And it also, very importantly, we have been putting low maintenance and not drilling our army. To be fair, we kind of like the low maintenance, and so maybe we will keep that, but we wanted to be able to drill our army, and we couldn't, because if we have all of our army up, and we have the full support of it, we actually will have a negative trend towards land, and we're trying to push naval. Another thing that harbor administration does is gives us a 0.1 trend to naval, and so with this we don't have to worry about accidentally trending towards land, and it is going to help with proximity overall. I think it might be just a flat proximity reduction in across naval areas. I don't think it is. The flat's really, really strong. But okay. We now get these Pondaco rights or let's find the word, in Naples, and this is a specialty building. We haven't gotten the naval palaces yet, but also we were lamenting a little bit the fact that we couldn't in Venice get a road, because this would have less dev capacity or less dev growth, because roads give development growth. But then we got this, and this is a ton of monthly devs, so that is a thing for Venice itself. So Venice is always going to be super caked up on growth. But where is this building? Where is it? Yeah, we get the rights to build these in Naples, and we start building a few of them. Very interesting is this migration attraction modifier. This is a lot of migration attraction, and it's strange that we can control where the migration is going to go in foreign countries. Now, we can only build these on the coast, but we can build these in places we'll eventually conquer, and so we can pull a lot of pops to the coast. And so we could build these big coastal megacities that'll have extra dev, really tall buildings. And so in a long-term kind of basis, pulling all the pops towards the coast is maybe like part of this overarching strategy as a result of building these. Because I think once we conquer the territories, these buildings stay. I don't think the buildings go away. We just can't build them in our own territory. And I think this is true for the other trade buildings. And so it's this very strange gameplay pattern where we are subjugating people and then prepping them for annexation. And then once we annex them, then we get a whole ton of value, just these huge power spikes. We're still building in our home territory, but we have like 2 urban areas or 3 urban areas, which is really low relative to the other nations we've been playing. We've been playing a lot of tier 1, tier 2 nations because those have the most content and we want to get reps on them. A lot of them have a lot of urban areas, or they just have a ton of locations. We're really on a small amount of locations, very lean, and almost all of it's in Venice. And so once on the good buildings we've capped our buildings, then there's not too much for us to do. We are kind of cruising up on, we do have a Venetian arsenal as well, giving us a lot of sailors, but we haven't really been utilizing our sailor capacity anywhere near what we were before. And I think that we are cruising up on the Venetian palace tech now, and I think that now it gives crown power. I think it gives 10% crown power, but that's just a unique one in the capital. But crown power is very, very important for us because our trade income scales with crown power, and half of our trade income when we're at 20% crown power, or half of our income is trade income when we're at 20% crown power. If we got 30% crown power, we're suddenly lifting off way more, especially because it's not scaling our expenses as far as I can tell. So this does seem to be a bit of a thing. Now, something kind of a big deal kind of happens now is we're starting to get a lot more of a buildup. We have a lot of buildings. We are getting additional ability to push. We're starting to build a lot more roads and this type of stuff. And what ends up happening is our market starts to expand quite a bit. And as our market expands, we pick up Florence. And Florence has a bunch of places that are occupied. And not only that, if we look at the resource map mode, we start to get central Italy in our Venice market. And also, we do go to war, and when you go to war, you get produced 20% less food. And what I'm getting at here is that, you can look here, there's basically no food. Oh, there's a livestock, there's a couple wool, there's a couple wheat, but really not that food dense. So we pick up the nastiness in Italy, in that now we're running this huge negative food malice. I also think that food has been rebalanced, so that's actually more important. We look at a bunch of other markets. A bunch of other markets were negative. Previously, it felt basically impossible to go negative. I don't know if this is an Italy thing or a rebalance thing, but we start to hemorrhage food, and we start to hemorrhage food bad. Like, buying food is costing us 10 ducats, then 20 ducats, then 30 ducats, then 40, 50. And it's basically, we were saying how we were cruising, and then it all goes away basically into this food expense, especially as we start a new war. Going for, I think that in this new war we went for Verona again, but now they're allied with Milan, and we can't pull Naples in, so that's a little bit rough, but we do have a lot of troops at this point, a much bigger army, and so, and I do think we drilled up a little bit on them. We deck on Ferrara, Milan, so Ferrara down here, Milan in here, and then, let's see, we also had Croatia, and Verona. So basically everyone all around us, and then we didn't have additional help. But okay. We end up getting this. We had a really, really nice general for our stack who was 93, 93, 100. So that's 93 admin, 93 Diplo, and 100 war. And your admin and your Diplo are relevant for combat. So that's really, really nice. And then in 1394, we max maritime finally in here. So now we're actually starting to get a decent amount of control over in these areas. And from Croatia, Croatia had some more of this territory, including a silver mine. For the peace, we take their silver, and 1 or 2 provinces we feed to Friuli over here. But we pick up their silver and a path out to the coast, which is nice because now we're maxed out maritime. We subjugate Ferrara. We subjugate Verona, and one of the big reasons why we're able to subjugate them is because the decreased war score costs, because we have, I think we used Brescia, who we had released from the previous war from Verona, and just the city. I think we used their their claims on their surrounding province to go after this. And then from from Valon, we forced them to release Cremona, which is, I think the province is named after them, but it's this province down here. We force them to release Cremona. And then we take just one city, we take one city or one location here, and we release Cremona, with the idea is, now that we've taken Verona out, or we vassalized them, we're going to do the same thing to Milan at a later date. And we are intentionally not running up the antagonism. I don't know if the antagonism is going to be a little bit more difficult, but we're also just generally trying to play with low antagonism, and so you might notice these wars are kind of stretched out over a pretty extended period of time, and we just don't want to super push the antagonism, not because it's bad, because I think we could probably manage it, but just trying to operate within a constraint and not just super push things and just go for like as much blobbing as possible or this type of thing. But back to the food struggle, because we are in it right now. We kind of drop everything and really try and start managing this pretty aggressively. First thing is we start importing to our market a bunch of food RGOs, which do deliver food to the market. Also, since we take down the levies which had been raised for that war, now we're producing an additional amount of food. And I think this is especially important for the urban areas because they already have a negative food modifier. So if you're already at like minus 60% food production and you get another minus 20%, that's not minus 20%, that's minus 33% in terms of how the math works. And we also build irrigation as much as we can. There's a big river that flows through here, and we build it in all of our subjects' territory. And irrigation gives you 5% additional food production, but it's a building you can build up an amount of levels that is dependent on whatever level scaling you have, so maybe like 5 in some areas and 10 in others, this type of thing, kind of in that range. And so we're getting 25 to 50% extra food production. But when we build them in our subjects, it only takes 2.5 ducats, which is great, and we don't really care about increasing the tax base. In fact, it doesn't increase the tax base, it just increases food output. So we really push in Ferrara, which has now been subjugated, and lands of Verona, we really push a lot of this irrigation stuff. And that's about as far as we've gotten now. Again, we're going to be recording in segments here, but at this point we have this huge chunk of the coast here, just kind of drawing all this around because we did take a bit of out of Croatia, and what we have is from a parliament a claim on Bosnia, so that's probably going to be the next expansion spot. I don't think Bosnia has a releasable, and so we won't be able to abuse in the same way we used our Padua claims and our Brescia claims. We won't be able to really use that, I think, to keep pushing Bosnia. If they do have a releasable, we'll go for it, but if they don't, we won't. And also, we've annexed a couple of subjects we had up here, and we are currently annexing Friuli, which stretches all the way down to here. I don't know why their name changes, this type of thing, but we are going to be getting that soon. And right before they finish annexing, what we're going to be doing is, of course, just spamming a bunch of buildings in there, because once they're queued up, even once you annex them, all the buildings stay in the queue, and so in this way we can really develop this a lot. But I think they only have 1 or 2 urban areas, so we won't necessarily have that maximum opportunity, but the rural buildings we will be able to max out before we integrate them, and so that is going to be pretty good. And at this point we also just do feel really strong. I think we're coming up on 1400, but I think that we're now the dominant force in the area. I don't think the AI, with the additional building costs and the fact that armories are really expensive, is going to be able to afford a particularly large standing army, although they do seem to be doing a little bit better in general. And so we have a standing army of, I think, 3 cannons, 6 cavalry, and 6 or 9 handgunners, and I think that that's kind of enough. That between that and our levies, I think that anyone in this region, even Austria or Hungary, we can probably fight, and so things feel pretty safe. Also, Naples is still our ally, and so we're in good shape. And we did go with the Diplo relations government reform, which is also giving us additional, I think we have 11 or 12 Diplo reputation. It's giving us more Diplo reputation, and we went that so we can manage all the subjects. But now, I think when we annex Friuli, we'll get off that government reform probably, because I do think it'll just not be, we won't, because we own more stuff directly, the upkeep cost of our subjects gets lower, and the upkeep cost of our alliance with Naples gets lower. And as that happens, it's going to be less important for us to have a whole ton of diplo capacity. But that's where we're at right now for this segment. Alright, so we are back with the AAR second session, and I just wanted to return to the government reform. We emphasize the cheaper building cost, but the government reform is actually spectacular, and what we're talking about is the Merchant Republic government reform. It's not visible in the Tinto flavor. It is just absolutely a tremendous defining feature of Merchant Republic, so I just wanted to emphasize these other bonuses are really good, and then also talk about the downsides briefly. We get minus 25% trade maintenance. This is a bonus, and also there's a lot of other sources of this, especially in the fourth age, I believe, where you are going to have international trade or global trade. And when you have more and more sources of these, they effectively get more valuable because it is a discount modifier. Second of all, you get minus 25% integration speed. This is a malus, and generally speaking, where your bonuses and malices are really applying, or sorry, where your malices are really applying is your ability to blob out. It is very significantly diminished because we're going to integrate stuff slower, so while we're using cabinets for, actions for integration, which we are throughout this run, it's going to be considerably slower as a result of, this malice. Then also, we will get plus 50% trade capacity, which is quite a lot. There's another source of 25% we get, I think, from going Diplo Focus. Eventually, that is a technology we unlock here. And then we also get plus 25% trade income, and this is multiplicatively effective with trade efficiency. Trade efficiency, if you're making 10 ducats and you get 5% trade efficiency, you'll be making 10.5 or 10.05. Math is hard. And then the way that if you're making 100 ducats and you get 5 trade efficiency, you'll make 105 ducats. But the way that this works is it's multiplicatively effective with your trade efficiency. So this is quite powerful. In a lot of our runs, we don't really make all that much from trade relative to tax. And whenever we talk about numbers here, we're going to see a lot of trade income relative to tax income. Now, the downsides, or also in the tech tree, just generally speaking, republics have better tech options. Now, what the downsides are is you don't get personal unions to expand, and with the nerfs to Diplo capacity, I do think personal unions are going to be come a lot better for expanding. And then also, you don't get access to fiefdoms. You only can have subjects that are vassals, or colonial nations, or these other subject types that you acquire later, but you only have access to vassals. Vassals integrate at a rate of a 1x multiplier. Fiefdoms integrate at a rate of a 2x multiplier. So you'll integrate fiefdoms twice as fast. So the normal expansion path that you have with monarchy, which is much faster, is going to be a lot slower because you are integrating much slower. And we'll see kind of throughout this run, we are a bit slow to integrate. We are going to try and first gain access to this loop here and then push our way out. But this is going to be an overall theme. So, to kick things off, we start building a university in Venice and also in Verona. These are going to give plus, I think it's 10% education access to both burghers and nobles, and I think maybe clergy. And this is really significant because we're mostly burghers in Venice at this point. I don't remember when in the campaign this happened, but eventually we get to the point where we have 0 peasants because we just have so many burghers. And this is going to be quite common. Now, Trivieso is going to be a little grain place here. It's got relatively high pop for us at this current juncture, and so we are putting down the university there because it is going to be applying to a much higher amount of pops, and also because we're running the plutocracy value, we are generating burghers per population. And so as we have a bigger population, we'll just have more and more burger jobs available. So the 10% literacy is going to be good on 2 fronts. It increases burger literacy, which increases development. And then also it is going to increase our just general literacy, which is going to increase research speed. So that is something we're getting. We're also getting an additional 10 pop promotion base rate. Now the base rate without, or additional 10 flat pop promotion. The base rate is 10. We already have 10 from libraries, and so this represents a 50% increase in our pop promotion as we get this. Now we compare ourselves to Hungary in terms of the tax base at this point in time, and we are earning, Hungary has gone from 40 to 288 tax base, and we've gone from 23 to 259. Okay. Next up, we declare war on and in the direction of Bosnia. And we subjugate Bosnia, and then let's pull up the Balkans map. Alright, taking a look at the Balkans map, there is also this location of Vidin here, and this features a releasable from Bulgaria, and we take the location of Vidin so that we can release it, so that we can get claims later. I do believe Bosnia, we just used the CB from Parliament to go in on, and so this is going to be valuable because what's going to happen later is, as time goes on, we will have opportunities to use Bulgaria as a kind of lever through which to get good CBs, where if we're strong enough, and to be fair, we tussled a little bit with Bulgaria, Wallachia, and had a little bit of trouble because the AI has a lot more armies and we're not yet used to it, but we can use them as a lever to get onto someone else. So there have been instances, I think in one war later, for example, we declare on Bulgaria, we co-CB the Byzantines, and we use that to get a better CB on the Byzantines ally. And so what we are doing now is we're trying to acquire these levers through which we are getting generally good CBs. But taking a look at what we have going on in the Balkans is that we have really hilly and mountainous terrain, and we are looking to gain, just kind of strategically, we're looking to gain access to this coast, in addition to Italy, just generally speaking here. And so Bosnia is going to be a great addition, but if we integrate Bosnia, we really won't be able to push that much control there. Bosnia, at this point in time, is actually super rich, and we are really surprised at how rich Bosnia is, how much money they have. They have very good resources, but the AI is doing quite a bit better. And so if we take a look down here, we can see that Bosnia is going to have a couple of silver. They have a silver here, they have a silver here. I think it's just the two, but also Vidim is going to be this wheat location, and eventually we can look to go for this gold location sometime in the future. Also, coming back, Florence finally breaks free from the revolution. They were occupied by a revolution for several decades. I think this might have been a bug, but they finally broke free, and Florence is a relatively big power in the region. The powers are starting to materialize. We're starting to eat into Verona, but Milan, Ferrara, Florence, and Genoa are all starting to look relatively big. We do start building more in other people's territory, though, especially Naples. And we have both these trading post buildings and these overseas trade post buildings. The trading posts themselves, I think we can only build on our starting continent, so I think they're only European. And I think they might require good relations, and you can build them really tall. And we get these in Naples, and throughout the run, we're really trying to push our trade advantage in Naples to gain control of the market so that we can control all the outgoing trade, rather than Naples, who is the current dominant power there, controlling it. But we also get a bunch of overseas trade posts, and specifically we start pushing a bit into Maghreb. And what we are doing is we are dotting the coastline with these trade buildings. We're starting to do it a little bit over here. We can't do it in the Mamluks just yet, but this is a function, doesn't require good relations. It's just a function of power projection. So if we have more power projection, we can build these buildings, the trade offices. Now, they give a lot less maritime presence now, but this is the idea of the building that we are looking to be building. So following that war, we do start to put down some civilian infrastructure. Remember, we're just kind of like, this is what we have going on. I think we haven't integrated Aquileia yet, and at this point, we are going to put down civilian infrastructure. In particular, we're building a lot of bridges, which give us an additional 5% proximity, especially as we start to push inland to land. This will start to matter, and we don't really have that much of a maritime push at this point in time. We also build some granaries, and we get our food up to plus 830. So we are starting to recover from the massive deficit of food we were having that was giving us significant, problems. Croatia starts a coalition, and we were trying to avoid this, but there's the avoiding of it was mainly just RP. This coalition has no teeth, and so it's not really that big a deal, and we cruise in on the year 1400. So at this point, our income in the year 1400 is 160, but we are running the parliament with extra taxes. Throughout this run, our income is kind of going to fluctuate, and it's not going to just linearly increase. And a big part of that is the buildings upkeep, but also a big part of that is that we kind of expand into our income a little bit in regards to army and keep pushing on the army up. But we're plus 160 right now, and a bit of a point of emphasis with Naples, just to talk about numbers and kind of get a vibe for things, is we have 40 trade capacity here in Naples. And with that, we are generating around 80 ducats worth of trade income. However, you get trade income into the treasury proportionate to your crown power. And this is a little bit of an awkward situation. Currently, we have 18% crown power, but there's this Zonta privilege, and it is bugged, and you can't deslot it, and this negative crown power malus is pretty painful because we would probably be closer to 22, 23 crown power if this were not in place, applying to the entirety of our country. Deslotting it would be a really big stab hit, but it would be well worth it to really increase our income. So from this 80 that we're getting worth of trade, we're only getting 18% of that, let's call it 0.2. We're getting around 16 of our income from these trade centers and such, these overseas buildings that we've built in Naples, and contextualized, to that 160 income. That's 10% of our income that we've gotten with buildings that were dirt cheap to build because we had minus 90% building cost in Naples. I think that we have some buildings that have cost 5, and then some that have cost 3, something like this. But overall, the investment hasn't been enormous, and it's not employing our own pops. So as it leans into this building tall kind of narrative, we're not employing our own pops here. If we ever take this land, though, it will brick all of these buildings. These buildings cannot be in land you own, but they will easily make up their own cost, over the course of time, even if we are to conquer Naples at a little bit of a later date. So, following this, we do a deck on Granada, and the idea is kind of the same. We're looking to take Fez. And we take Fez, and the whole point is the whole claims bit, but later stuff will go awry. Fez will have rebellions because we feed it too much territory, and we don't get invited to those rebellions, and then Morocco gets invited, and somehow Morocco bricked the fact that Fez was Fez, and Fez lost all of the claims. Or maybe Morocco enforced loss of all claims, and so eventually Fez isn't useful in that regard. We also do take Gibraltar for the purposes of we want to eventually colonize. I think that the strategy, or Venice, this whole merchant republic thing where you have a whole bunch of trade bonuses but you're punished for building wide, I think that this will play great as a colonial kind of long-term plan, and I think we'll get paid off for colonization way more because we are getting this really, not only are we going to have quite a bit of trade efficiency eventually, maybe 10, 15%, something like this, we have this plus 25% trade income modifier, and so this is just free money, right? So for every trade we do, the trade is based on the margin between the two markets. So let's say we're taking chilies from the New World, we're buying them at 2, and we're selling them in Venice for 6, right? So that's 4, but then we are going to have a maybe 125% multiplier on top of a 125% multiplier, and you can kind of see where this is going. We're producing free value kind of out of nothing, and we are really going to rake it in from the trade, and also we get rewarded more for building tall, just generally speaking, because of the crown power aspect of it, because as you expand out, your crown power tends to go down, and since the crown power is scaling your trade income, also what we see is when we expand or when we annex people, often our income doesn't really go anywhere, because what happens is our tax income goes up, and then our trade income goes down, because we now have less crown power. So in terms of this Zonta privilege, it's really kind of punishing us quite a bit. We also upgrade to town, this Gibraltar, right away, because we do want to build civilian infrastructure there and get things going. We also do a total of 3 town expands. Right now, Italy, just generally speaking, starts out very urbanized, but we town and we start towning this kind of horseshoe area, and the goal here is to have all of this urbanized. All of this will get to 100 control relatively easily because it's going to be connected to Venice via maritime presence, and so it is going to not be that big a deal. We hit 1404, and our income, in terms of breakdown, we are getting 20 from minting, we are getting 90 from tax, we are getting 140 from trade, and we are getting 45 from Diplo. Remember, the subjects that we do have, right, these kind of subjects in this area where we've started a lot of subjugation, and also Bosnia, these subjects are paying us quite a bit. But at this point, we're getting more trade income than tax income. As the run kind of goes on, and as we start to integrate people, this starts starts to shift a little bit, and I think it'll shift back towards trade as we acquire trade range, because also our trade, the value of our trades is going down as we acquire more and more trade capacity, because the juiciest trades have already been executed. And so there's like a kind of a need to expand into new markets, or to build stuff internally that's going to contribute to the tax base, fine cloth, a lot of industry, which building these towns is going to help for, but building these up so that we can export goods, so that we can gain value through export, because when we churn money, we're getting free money modifiers. And it's also even possible that we can trade stuff back and forth to each other, or in a circle, just like a complete circle where cotton goes here, or triangle even, and then fine fabric goes here, and then, you know, like an input for cotton goes, or there's no input for cotton, but you get the idea. Or, yeah, cotton goes to make regular fabric, which goes to make fine cloth. And by running it in a triangle, because we're getting effectively like 1.4 worth of free money because of trade efficiency and this 25% trade income, this might make sense in some sort of world where we are going to be doing that. Alright, so at this point, Milan and Genoa have much bigger armies than us. Our territory kind of spans, we have Cremona, we have Verona subjugated, we have Aquila. I think we've annexed at this point, but I'm not exactly sure where we are in the timeline. We have this territory proper, of course, we've annexed Padua, we subjugated Ferrara and I believe Mantua, not 100% sure, but the idea is we're kind of in this block. We even have Croatia, or little snippets of land off Croatia, and Bosnia subjugated, but Milan and Genoa combined have a way bigger army than us. Genoa has 3.5k troops, regulars, Milan has 2k, and I think they both have more pops, so they're going to have a lot more regulars, and so if they conduct themselves well, we will kind of get rolled up. So what we do is we pay quite a bit, a handsome amount, for 9 mercenaries, and we upgrade to 27 regulars, so we will have an army of 4.5k regulars, which is enough to kind of have a decisive advantage over them. I really do like hiring mercs for just kind of these inflection points. I think maybe we could have gotten away with, you know, getting 21 units of regulars and 18 units of mercs, something like this. A little bit more merc heavy. With the mercs, we go for cavalry units, and the cavalry units will die first, generally speaking, because they'll get initiative, they'll get in on the front, they'll start causing a lot of damage. We have handgunners, which are slow to get on the front, and so we don't have to worry too much about the merchant upkeep, because we're planning on, you know, sending them into the wood chipper. And so from this war, we have a note that it costs 23 in antagonism, but I'm not sure. This seems a little bit cheap, but maybe this is what we paid. We take Genoa proper in its province and one location here to Cremona, which is the subject we have here. We feed this little section of Milan, and we subjugate Pavia. The whole point here is we are trying to set up an ability to subjugate Milan and Genoa, and we do this using the CB from Cremona because it wants the territory it has back, because it's just this one location, just the city itself, which is in on that territory. So you can see that this is the province of Cremona. Just this is all we have of Cremona, so it has claims on these other two because that is part of its proper territory. So that is what we go for. We are now in control of the Genoa market, and then we also get a dynamic historical event called the Fall of Genoa, with a kind of rivalry-esque theming between you know, Venice and Genoa, and we have emerged triumphant. I believe it gives us some pretty hefty, like you know, short-term bonuses like 20 prestige, stuff like this, and then it is going to be pretty nice. In terms of pressing the maritime, at this point we go from 15 barks to 40 barks. I'm actually uncertain that the barks can really pay for themselves at this point in time, and it's largely because if we kind of take a look at the Tinto flavor on Venice, and we look at just how good their territory is down here, this is a subject, and these are just islands with like 5k, so I think we actually maybe aren't even supposed to push the maritime that aggressively. Just outside this little pocket here, just because there's not a lot of value. And in theory, this is what we want to, this is what we want to be doing. We want to in theory, we gained a lot of maritime, and then we gained control of markets, and we never really felt that we lifted off in this regard, because I think maritime was significantly nerfed. To be fair, it maybe is too cheap, but maybe some of the power of merchant republics should be taken off of some things, and instead moved on to maritime, where they will have an advantage at pushing this type of thing, or maybe they should just have an advantage of it just in general, but overall, they do feel quite strong. And now we have a note for where we actually start to pop off quite a bit. So, was a little unsure on the timeline, but we have Aquileia. However this is pronounced, we annex them at this point in time. It does take us quite a bit of time to annex, because they're vassals. They annex half the speed at which a fiefdom does. But at this point, after annexing them, in terms of diplo capacity, we're 4.81 out of 5.25. Our pops nearly double, and we get up to 1 million pops in 1405. We have 18% crown power at this point in time, which is pretty good. And let's read through some of these notes. Alright, so we have a note that says 180/90 income. I assume this means we're making 180 during a parliament, 90 outside of a parliament. So, despite doubling our pops, and before we finish this annexation, we put down an enormous amount of buildings queues, because we keep the queue of the buildings, so we just literally just max everything out, because we have that like 90% discount on buildings, and so it'll take us a while to fully get all the value out of this area, but just fully annexing it right away, we are not generating that much additional income. We also get this tech for 20% improved relations from the Diplo tree. Eventually we'll get another 30% improved relations speed from being the Diplo hegemon. We are needing to spend entirely in terms of our sliders, maxing out our Diplo expenditure in order to maintain enough Diplo capacity to support all these subjects that we have, and our slow expansion and slow integration is making us stay on the subjects maybe for longer, but the improved relations are allowing us to keep the subjects loyal and also to combat any type of coalition. I think at this point the Croatia one's probably gone away, and we are trying to play where we're not hitting coalitions, not because just from an RP perspective, we want to throttle ourselves in that regard, and so we're improving relations in order to make that happen so that we can kind of be declaring wars relatively actively while simultaneously avoiding a coalition entirely. Now, for cultures, we need to have a place be accepted culture over 50% or primary culture, and we see the Frulians, we go out and we accept them, and we will have a slight discount on this. It only costs us 0.15 to accept them because they are on positive opinion. At this point in time, we notice that our CB on Morocco has been bricked. We kind of discussed this earlier, but of course we are going to be big sad about that. At this point, we get decked on for the second time this run, I think, by Hungary, and they have a pretty big army. They have Salzburg on their side, coming in from south of Germany. We managed to repel them without too much difficulty, and we vassal feed Salzburg to Gorchik because it fixes the borders if they annex them, but notably, this is a way that we can also circumvent Diplo capacity. We are trying not to really abuse it too much unless like it geographically makes sense to vassal feed or would allow us to have cleaner borders while still having long-term allies if they annex the other one. We also take 4 locations with wool. I think we take these kind of locations up here from this area, and then we take 1 location over here and we use it to release Transylvania, which of course, again, this is a strange gameplay pattern, but we're using it so that we have levers for later, you know, to have better CBs as time goes on. Now, during this time, we keep getting interesting DHEs, dynamic historical events, and we get one Venice during the Renaissance. We also have ones for Venice festival, this type of thing. Venice during the Renaissance gives us specifically 5% research, or 5 research, and so that's kind of nice. Now, 1420 is now the time, and this is the time to deck on Morocco again, and so this is going to be what we want. Again, guess maybe we bricked the CBs later, and we just didn't have access to the CBs, but here we feed Fez a bunch of locations. Yeah, that was the problem. So Fez is right here, and we feed them a bunch of locations, and these locations are what eventually causes the rebellion, but we also feed Fez Granada in terms of subjugation, and this is just too much for Fez to keep on track of. They're just an OPM with a bunch of like extra territory. It was way too much. We don't grab the extra land here in Morocco or in Iberia, the Moroccan land. We will save that for another war. But Morocco, I think, has rivaled us at this point, something like this. And okay. We also get a unique building. We'll see if it's here in the flavor, but it is an interesting one where it is going to be the Venetian palaces, and these give 10% crown power a pop, but just in the location that they are. However, they are kind of an insano building. This is not present here, but it also gives 10% crown power to the location. They employ up. Look at that. That's a lot of nobles. That is a whole lot of nobles. So as we build a ton of these, first of all, it takes us absolutely forever to promote enough nobles to occupy this. Just as a frame of context, there are like noble buildings that take 5 or 10 nobles. This one takes a whopping 200. But what this is going to do is the heaviest weight for political power is in the nobles. And what this is doing is this is dramatically increasing the number of nobles we have in Venetia. And at the same time, per level, it's giving us 10% crown power. I know this one doesn't say 10% crown power, but it's giving 10% crown power. But my understanding is it's just to the location. But we are super overweighting Venetia in terms of crown power, or in terms of flat political power, by adding all these nobles, and then simultaneously giving ourselves plus 110% eventually crown power. At the point of 1437, I think we have 7 or 8 of these buildings fully employed, while we still have a capacity for a total of 11. So it is going to be an interesting one, but this is going to help us to have really high crown power. This is one of the tools in our belt, which is helping to offset the fact that this is bugged. We, of course, have put in a ticket for it, but we can't unslot Zonta, so we're going to keep complaining about it because it is a little bit annoying. But this is quite a bit of a thing that we can get 10 levels in this building here. Again, it is just local, but if over half of our political power is in Venice, it's effectively giving us like 50% crown power in terms of what is going on. Now, at this point, we aren't making too much money, but a big part of that is we are exploring, and exploration is a major cost for us, and we're, of course, exploring the yonder over here, where we are trying to set ourselves up for a good colonial age. We want to put ourselves in good shape for this, and so we are both discovering the islands with the intention of eventually colonizing them as well there off to the west. So at this point we go on a big building spree. Specifically, every urban area that is a subject of ours, we look to put down 2 stacks of buildings. So if they're a city, they're going to be able to stack up to maybe 8 to 10, and so it's going to cost us 50 ducats to put in 20 buildings. And if there's a town, maybe it has 5 building capacity per level or per type of building, and so we're going to end up building 10 buildings. It's going to cost us 25 ducats, but we do a ton of that building, and we also build up quite a bit of civilian infrastructure, stuff like universities, which I'm not sure these numbers are still correct. I think they might be. Extra migration attraction, and in particular we're putting the universities on the coast in the loop because we want to eventually build pound lock canals kind of along this coast here in this loop, because from Venice we are going to maritime push to the coast, and then the coast can get all pound lock canals, and then once we have those there, our ability to push inland is going to be pretty improved. But in order to do that, we have to get the places up to 50 population, which is where buildings like the university come in, where we're building them first on the coast to get the extra migration attraction. We also get an additional 0.1 migration attraction from cathedrals, so we build cathedrals on the coast specifically, whereas universities, we're looking to put them in high pop areas just generally. And also, I think at this point we already have access to the counter cows, but just want to point this one out, plus 33% crown power. If we build these in high pop areas, that's going to really help with crown power, help to pull it out. Again, our crown power is scaling our trade advantage, so it is extra important for us and is an incentive to not actually blob out as much. The reason we have to blob, though, is going to be hubris. So not a very good reason, but that's the truth. So we go about, after this has been some time and we're ready to deck on Milan and Genoa again, the alliance, at this point we won't need to recruit up mercs, but we don't declare on Milan. The reason why is they're allied with Austria. We'd rather dodge Austria, and this is something that is a lot easier, or was a lot easier, before Diplo capacity got nerfed, because what we would do is we would have a bunch of allies too, and then we'd be generating favors with those allies, and we could use those allies to brick alliances. We can't brick the alliance with Milan and Austria, but it is just fortunate that we have an ability to attack Genoa. I think we took Sardinia or Piedmont, just this little tip here, so that we would get a CB on Genoa, so we could just declare on Genoa again and get after Milan and Genoa. And so that is going to be useful for us. Before we peace, or let's, in the peace deal, we take all the locations of Milan. Milan had consolidated some of this up here. We take all the locations of Milan that are in the south. And then also what we take is we subjugate Genoa, and we also feed stuff to Pavia, or Pavia takes the Genoa subjugation, because Pavia's got some split up land. Genoa itself is split up, and so once all that's incorporated, it'll be a nice little horseshoe shape. Other than that, Genoa has like this land over here, Genoa has like this land, and all of it has been bricked by us taking Genoa proper, where none of this has access to each other. So that's the reason why we feed them to Pavia, with the hopes that Pavia will eventually subjugate them or annex them and fix the proximity issues, because it's going to be a really long time before we look to be annexing this. Now, in terms of cabinet actions we've been running for some time here in Venice, is we've been deving Venice. The reason being is, if you are using a maritime nation, your ability to push out from that location in terms of the port is going to be really important. If we get dev higher in Venice, that's going to make our ability to move onto the sea tile cheaper and cheaper and cheaper until it's virtually free. And this is going to make the cost of every connection cheaper, because everything is connecting to Venice itself. So we do want to get that down. It is helped by harbor capacity, but also Venice, this is just a huge province as well, and so it is relatively efficient. I think if you're doing any maritime country, that you're really going to get a lot of value from dev provincing wherever you're pushing out from. If your capital is the coastal nation you're pushing out from, but also there's a world where you know, we could move the capital down here to, let's say, Terra di Lavoro, which I think Naples is in here, and we could dev province this province and this province with the idea that we're pushing naval out from here, and we're pushing naval, you know, kind of over to Sardinia, over here, down here to Sicily, this type of stuff, and also we would be pushing navally out from the other side, you know, pushing over into Croatia, over into Bosnia, these types of things. So deving up those areas really would have a lot of effect on a lot of downstream locations. But if you're not getting a lot of effect on downstream locations, dev province has gotten quite a bit better. I mean, worse. We're also using stabilize the nation. I think that generally speaking, the stability slider is kind of expensive, and so this is kind of an income cabinet action, because you're substituting having to pay for the slider or having to pay as much for the slider to get the same effect, and instead you are just using the cabinet action. And then we've also been integrating territory. We're not a super big fan of having to integrate territory by hand, but we annex everything slower. We're starting to, or we're just generally crimped. I think we're integrating Genoa, and until we get a better cabinet action, I think we're just going to be stuck on integrating, just because it's going to be the only cabinet action, or it's going to be the best cabinet action we have available. We could do another dev province, but it is a little bit slow. It wouldn't be the worst, but we don't have Ferrara annexed. That would be the one we'd really want to dev, because there's a river that flows through here, so that'd be able to give us better pushing of control to like Milan or something like this. And as it stands right now, there's not really anything we could dev up that would help a lot for propagating control. So at this point, we only have high antagonism with Milan, Morocco, and our own subjects, so we are doing pretty well at keeping the coalition down. Again, anyone who's big, we're improving relations on, and we are benefiting from the tech that we get from the Diplo focus for this age. We do a little bit of what I think is kind of a bit of a metagame play that is going to become more powerful as people just get more tight with their game actions, which is Verona has like minus 350 relations with us, because you get a minus 100 relations hit every time you deck war on someone, and they decay at 2 a year. So it's going to be forever till we can annex Verona. So their loyalty is not particularly important. So what we do is we seize a territory from Verona, specifically an urban territory, where we slap down like 30 or 40 buildings, and then we seize it, and so now it has 30 or 40 buildings in the queue, and I think it's this kind of territory right here. It does start out urban, and it was like a wheat or something like this. I forget what the location is in terms of its resource. I think it might have been this one in terms of having the wheat there, and so it's not going to matter because the minus 350 relations. We also start investing in Este, which Este is this location, I think right here, and this is a wheat location, and we start stacking a bunch of various things that are going to improve food quite a bit. We have irrigation. I think we have some of the buildings for this, which gives extra population capacity and food production. And so this is going to act as a force multiplier for the other things. We're also leaving it rural as a force multiplier, and we are also going to be giving it... we are also going to be adding other stuff on top of this, like the extra wheat farms, which this is going to be multiplying through. And then we have sheep farms, which we're also going to add. They give, I don't think they give this food production anymore, but they are outputting wool, and I think they use less inputs than this, and so the outputting of wool, which is going to give 5 food itself. And then eventually, I don't think at this point we realize it because we just were little silly billies, but we also can add to this location towns. And one of the towns gives you another 5% food. So in all, we get, I think, over a plus 100% additional food production here. And this is our first time really kind of pushing a piece of territory as a breadbasket, where we are like, okay, it's farmland. It has a river, so we can build irrigation. Normally, if something's a farmland and a river, we want to upgrade it to a city to push control. Well, pushing control... it seems a lot worse, just generally speaking, than it used to be, because Dev Province got a lot worse. If you can't decrease proximity costs, or decreasing proximity costs, because you have to pay proximity every location you go through and you get fewer and fewer control, decreasing proximity costs is more effective the more of this modifier you have. You know, if you have minus 50% proximity, you'll pay half. If you have minus 95%, or sorry, if you have minus 25%, you'll only pay 3/4, but if you get another minus 25% on top of that, that additional minus 25% is going to reduce the amount you pay by 33%. So as you get more and more of the modifier, it gets better. Well, I think you kind of can't get the proximity modifiers as fast as you need to anymore, so turning this into a city to get a Pound Lock Canal, I think is less valuable, because by the time you get it, you're already getting towards modern roads, which give minus 35 flat proximity, and at that point, you very significantly diminish the advantage of this extra proximity cost reduction, and instead, we get a lot more stability with this breadbasket location. Also, all throughout any area that has wetlands, which I do think we have quite a bit of wetlands, we are also able to, I think there's other conditions as well that allow us to push it, but we can build rural smelters, which have an input of coal. We are also building coal things that build coal. The coal uses an input of wood, so we are building it where we have wood, which, if we take a look here, we have wood kind of up in these upper areas, so in these provinces, we put in a little bit of coal production, but with the rural smelters, it's going to produce iron, which is quite a nice resource just in general to have. We also start colonizing Micronesia off the coast here. It is going to be a small little colony. We want it established before the colonial age hits, and then once the colonial age hits, I think we will look to immediately start colonizing the island kind of chain down here below that, and maybe we look to explore over to the left. There's the 3 kind of island areas. To come back to our own nation, we have at this point an income of 359. This is excluding expenses, but just kind of a bit of a breakdown. 140 of it's from tax, 125 is from trade, 61 is from Diplo, and 70 is from net. Or 70 is our net. Okay. So the net isn't enormous. It's a little bit smaller, or it's kind of, well, it's roughly the same size as it was before, but that's the breakdown. We're making a little bit more now from tax than from trade, which was not as much the case before. And of course, we shake our fists, as always, at the privilege that we cannot deslot, because we'd be making a lot more from trade if we didn't have Zonta. So shout out to Zonta. We then also seize from Verona, or seize not from Verona, we seize from, I believe, the Ferrara at this point, this Rimini province. And we do the same thing that we did with Verona, where I think we're integrating Ferrara at this point. Ferrara is this big blob, but I think they're sufficiently loyal that we can get away with it, and also seizing this decreases the cost that we have to pay to integrate it. Incidentally, we also discover later in the run that you can downgrade locations. Locations, if they are towns or cities, take more integration costs, and so the fact that you can downgrade them is a little bit strange, because you can increase the integration speed by downgrading everything if you were so inclined. We're not going to abuse that, except for if there's an RGO we particularly want, we're going to downgrade just to have access to more of that RGO. And I think we do that in one of these locations in Bologna sometime later, where we downgrade it because we want it to be building wool anyways, and we don't want to, when we're building the macro builder, we're just putting down a bunch of buildings there, to accidentally be building in our subject in a thing that we're going to be downgrading anyways, because in particular central Italy, very, very food light. We really want access to the full amount of food RGOs possible, and then we want to build sheep there, and then we want to build irrigation there, stack up the multipliers, build farming villages, and look to support our food with these force multipliers like the irrigation or the farming village, which also gives percent food production. So this wheat location right here, it's called Udine, and it has some interesting characteristics in terms of territory, because it's grassland and it's flatland, so it's not suffering from the marsh, and we figure we're probably going to end up pushing control internally this way. So this is a place where we really want to pound Lock Canal, because a lot of these places behind are going to trace their control through Udine. So we already built the cathedral there for the extra migration capacity, the university there, but now we start hosting parliaments there. And parliaments, you can host them in your capital, or you can host them elsewhere, and you need to kind of high roll your ability to host them elsewhere, because they need like a parliamentary seat. But once you have a parliamentary seat there, you can be hosting your parliaments there. If you're hosting the capital, it'll give you temporary trend towards centralization. I can't remember if it's 0.05 or 0.1, and if you host them elsewhere, it'll give you a decentralization trend. We have enough centralization that we can afford to eat the decentralization trend, and so we host it in Udine. And it also gives a lot of development while the parliament is going on, and from now on out we will be hosting our parliaments in Udine, so that we can try and push control up into the northern areas a little bit better. You know, this lead behind it, this is actually copper now, but these resources behind it we are going to be able to generate more proximity from, by virtue of kind of treating Udine as a hub, increasing the development there, because for every development you get -1 proximity cost, and so this is going to make all of these areas more proximal. Also, a little bit notable, there's 2 mercury sources in Italy. We were kind of, this is a very valuable resource. It's a rare resource. You're not going to generate a ton of money from it, but it's important you have it when it comes to producing additional income from silver and gold. Hard to evaluate, but there's a mercury here, and there's also a mercury here. We use the parliament that we host with Udine to get a CB to go in on Bologna, France, and Siena. There isn't really a chain of declarations that will work for us. That will give us an ability to get in on these guys, so we do have to use the Parliament CB. But the Parliament CB is more than... These guys are sufficiently small that the Parliament CB is more than enough to cover what we want from here. And this is kind of the last vestiges. Florence kind of has all of this. There's a couple OPMs, kind of spitting around, but Florence is pretty big. Pisa's eaten Lucca. Someone's eaten Lucca. Shout out to Lucca. And then Siena's also eaten a little little bit over here. So this central Italy, this is the last bit of northern Italy. We've subjugated, or no, we haven't subjugated Milan yet, but all other than Milan, we have all of this here, right? And then once we get this bracket here, we're really kind of stomping in on northern Italy, which is generally speaking kind of our goal, or where we were looking to kind of finish, because we didn't want to fight with Naples or the Papal States just yet, and so we're getting there. Kind of quickly here, we subjugate all of Florence, Siena, and Pisa here. So basically the rest of this falls to us. This is in 1417, and at this point, we're at 5.65 out of 5.25 in terms of our Diplo capacity. So our Diplo capacity is busting at the seams. Now, we don't have so many subjects or such big subjects that we're really eating a huge penalty to loyalty quite yet, because they're powerful relative to us, but we are getting a huge penalty because of being over on the Diplo capacity. This also makes us generate a lot more antagonism, so us annexing people is going to be important because this is going to free up the capacity. Currently, the way the capacity is working is like our biggest subject might be Bosnia, and they're giving us like triple our smallest subject, which might be Trent over here. And with that said, Trent is very, very small relative to Bosnia, and so the floor is pretty high, and so what we're going to do is we're going to try and annex smaller subjects of ours in order to get out from underneath this deficit in capacity, rather than trying to annex the bigger subjects, although we do want to annex the bigger subjects. In terms of maritime, we're doing pretty good. Remember, we upped the ships from 15 to 40, and as far as Ragusa goes, they now have 72% proximity, so since they're also a core, that's going to be a plus another 20, or actually, is it a core? I think it's core. But that's a plus another 20 control, minus maybe 5, from satisfaction, and then plus 5 because it's a town. And so we'll have around 90 control in this region here in Ragusa, just to kind of like contextualize stuff. But again, most of our pop is over here, so it's the fact that we can't push in by land all that well that is going to gimp us a little bit more. But we're trying to get access to the coast in terms of who we decide to incorporate, just generally speaking. And then next age, when we get access to paved roads, then we can start pushing in quite a little bit better. So we wouldn't want to like annex Genoa like early on, or we can't even, because Genoa is a subject of Pavia. So, but annex Pavia into Genoa if that was the thing, which is one of the reasons why we fed Genoa to Pavia in this kind of run here. So one of the subjects that we annex is Brescia, which was just a single city. We're not going to be able to push much control to this, but this is helping to alleviate the pressure on our Diplo capacity. We actually finished annexing that, and we waited to finish annexing that before the subjugation of these central Italians. We also accept Lombard culture, which only takes us a 0.15 cultural capacity, because we had earlier in the run gotten Milan with 50 favors to improve their cultural opinion of us, so this is a little bit cheaper for us. But now we're over cap slightly on the cultural one as well. We're 1.56 out of off of 1.5, and so we are pressured here a little bit, and we have to slow down at this juncture. We get a law for Republicans called the Republican Electorate Law, and we choose the Board of Admiralty, and with this we get an additional trend towards naval. Something that we have had to do is that we've had to keep our army with low maintenance when we're not at war, and try and finish wars quickly. And the reason for this is if our army was at full maintenance and we got enough army tradition, we could start trending towards land, not something that we want. And with this additional 0.1 trend towards naval, we really secure our ability to kind of ignore other things that'll push us towards land. So for example, building a bigger army will push you towards land. So in terms of if you're a naval empire, you might actually have to avoid building as much military. Now we don't have to worry about that as much. It also gives us naval tradition ticking, so we're going to just generally have higher naval tradition, although I don't remember exactly how much that's worth. It's at this point that we noticed the Zonta bug. We didn't notice it earlier just because it was invisible. The bug is that it's invisible, and then we're like looking through our crown power. Why is our crown power so low? I don't understand. We have all this infrastructure, and then we're like, oh, Oh, I see. Oh, I understand. At this point, though, we have 21% crown power. And this is going to be a weird sort of tension, is as we annex stuff, I think it actually kind of decreases our income in some spots because we keep lowering our crown power. But in order to make progress and set ourselves up for later, we want to keep annexing and incorporating and expanding and these types of stuff. So it is a little bit of tension. And so, generally speaking, like throughout the rest of the run, or the rest of the period that we're going to be covering in this run, we don't really increase our income too much. We increase it a little bit, and then we add a little bit of military, and it ends up being, just generally speaking, kind of a bit of a wash. And we missed something. We missed something in the tech tree, which is, in the first stage, the Age of Traditions, a tech that we have been completely skipping, called the, Expanded Archives gives 20% Diplo capacity, so we go after that right away, and it solves our Diplo capacity problem. We were just so used to skipping over it, we completely forgot it existed, because it was like Cap didn't exist as a resource. And so, okay, we get a parliament that we go for whenever we kind of see it, and again, we are parliamenting up this location up in here, rather than the capital, because we're looking to increase the dev there. But this is increased naval infrastructure. And what this does is we kind of just salivate and foam at the mouth anytime we roll it, because it gives us 0.25 control in a whole bunch of coastal territories, which is most of our territories, and also gives us 2 progress towards naval. So we're looking at pushing that, but also having your burghers be over 50% of your estate power is actually incredibly nice, because we can push all of their agenda buttons. No one else is powerful enough to get pissed when we push their agenda buttons. We like all of their agendas, and it just feels very, very clean and nice. Whereas when the nobles are really powerful, it feels ugly and nasty, because the nobles have some of the worst agendas, and you get a lot of situations where you roll up your parliament and then you can't click any buttons. To be fair, we hit that a few times, but in particular, parliament feels a lot smoother with the burghers, and we are looking to do stuff that pushes up our naval kind of points. We also get more PP, and by PP, we mean power projection. There's another tech that increases this, and as we get this, we start being able to expand a lot more of these overseas buildings that we had mentioned earlier, of these trade offices. There's overseas trade offices, there's regular trade offices. The regular trade offices have to be built in the same continent, could get built much taller, but as we have more power projection than our other nations, we gain the ability to build these in them, and we expand these as much as possible because we have the massive reduction in building cost. It's super, super worth it. At this point, we do click the Parliament also, increase taxes, and with the increased taxes from Parliament, we do hit a new high of 259 income per month in terms of ducats. That's buckets of ducats. So, kind of as we approach this end of the age, we do record up a lot of our stuff, and we start to get, in my opinion, fairly active. In the years 14-19, and we actually roll up our best ruler so far. We're on a lottery election, so it's a real crapshoot. I don't know how to move on to a better election that is a bit more meritocratic. I do know that there are government reforms that do this in the next stage, and we might go for one of these, but we'll see exactly how that shakes out for this. But we roll a guy who has 90 administration, 74 dip, and 42 military, so that's a very, very tidy, over 200 total, stats. We also annex Trent up here. Again, we're trying to free up our capacity more than actually wanting what's there in Trent, although we do, it is kind of nice that we can delete the town with the marble in it, although I guess we could have deleted that before. Actually, maybe we couldn't. Maybe we can't downgrade it when it's their capital. But there is a marble up here. I think there's a couple wood, but the point is, this frees up like 0.3 Diplo capacity for ourselves. We are actually kind of paying a decent amount of Diplo capacity for the levers that we had acquired earlier. Remember, we do have a lever here in terms of an ability to declare war on Bulgaria, and another one over here in Hungary, where we are using that to gain access to better CBs, just in a general sort of sense. There's a coalition of the remaining Italian miners, like 2 or 3 like OPMs, but it's really not that relevant. We also also are looking to turn Udine into a city. And we start doing a little bit of migration there to get it to 50k pop. Unfortunately, we don't even reach the point where we can quite do it by the end of this age, but we're just 1 month from being able to afford it at the end of the age. We do get the pops there, but then our wood price gets expensive, and we don't want to upgrade for like an additional 20% cost, and so we try and bring the wood prices down, and then we get a little bit distracted and maybe aren't in as much of a rush. We spend the money we have. It is 5k base price to upgrade a city, and now you can only decrease the price by 50%, and so this is 2,500 ducats to upgrade a city, and we have so many urban areas already, and we have so many opportunities for economic like growth, especially when our subjects we can build in for like minus 90% cost. It really feels quite painful to upgrade the city. That said, eventually the cities allow you to gain greater and greater margins. We eventually will want cities, but Italy as a whole starts out just turbo urbanized, and so maybe it is a little bit less important just generally for Italy. It's at this point we realize that we talked about it a little bit. We realized that farming villages give percent, and we're not used to building a bunch of farming villages, but they give percent output, so we put it down a bunch of farming villages in a bunch of spots. We put them down on the livestock. We're not planning on building over the livestock, really getting adjustment to kind of this new metagame where in particular wheat, livestock, 8 food each, and then rice is going to be the next best food. There's only a little bit of rice over here in terms of Italy, and then wool is a really good access to food. It's only 5 food, but the wool itself is quite valuable. 2.5 base price, feeds into one of the best industries of the game in fabric. And these areas, all of these, we're kind of not so keen on upgrading them, and I think that if we are building villages in a place that is one of these food things, we definitely want to build the farming village for the extra, what they produce is livestock, but then also for the percent food modifier, because it's multiplicatively effective with these other things. And also, if we have a preference for something that we want to keep rural, for purposes of stacking these modifiers, all along here is kind of the awkward place we would want to keep rural, because the river cuts through here. There's a river that cuts through here, and so now there's a bit of tension where we can either build cities in urban areas over these rivers and go for a Pound Lock Canal, or we can keep them rural, build up irrigation, and use that irrigation to act as a force multiplier alongside the farming villages to gain more food. So it is a bit of a tension here that we are not necessarily the biggest fan of. But we go for a Parliament CB, and we go for a Parliament CB on someone in Anatolia. Let's take a look. So at this point, we have enough boats that we can kind of attack wherever we really want to, and what we want to do is we want to go for Cilicia, and the reason why is they actually have claims on the Eternids, they have claims on this little minor that remains here, and they have claims on the Ottomans and on the Mamluks. And since they have claims on basically everyone around them with little snippets, this is an awesome lever. And so this was a really nice opportunity that we saw. So we Parliament CB them, and we do it for claims. We are also over capacity again on our Diplo capacity, which is going to be a bit of a vibe. We kind of come back to Italy and then focus again on building civilian infrastructure. Generally speaking, you're kind of focused on the military for a bit, and then once your war finishes, then you focus on the eco. In theory, you should be doing both simultaneously, but in terms of play pattern, it is quite nice to kind of oscillate between nation building or building your nation and then building your nation, as it were. Look at this farmland, though. So juicy. Really, really good for additional food. It's a shame that there just aren't that many RGOs, and there's already a ton of there's already, a ton of towns and stuff like this. There aren't a lot of food RGOs, and there's also a bunch of urban areas that make the food prices more acute. But we start building civilian infrastructure in our subjects, and we start doing stuff like putting counting houses in our subjects, because these cost us like 130 ducats. The base price now is like I think it's like 400. They cost us like 130 ducats So I think the base price must be like 300 or something, but they are really expensive. Maybe it's 400, but in our subjects, they only cost us 20 to build. So we start building some of that in our subjects, and then we we declare on Bulgaria, and we declare on Bulgaria using our Vadim lever that we acquired earlier, which is quite nice for us. Allied to them is Serbia, the Byzantines, and the Byzantines have now been relegated to like these 3 provinces here. The Byzantines generally collapse, and this is no exception. And for whatever reason, there are 2 like different CBs. There's like 3 or 4 CBs that your subjects will get when they're trying to go back after their claims. And I'm not sure if there's different rules for different ones or what exactly it is. Like one is like dubious claims, one is claims on a province, one is follow through with threat, because if you have claims you can make a threat and this type of thing, and 2 of those will give the discount, 1 will not. But in this case we can't subjugate people, fine, this is fine enough, but we also run into a bit of a snag. We kind of roll through Serbia quite a little bit, and then we start acquiring some very stiff resistance. Wallachia has really loud cars, and they're outside of our window, but also they hire a bunch of mercs, and they have some really nasty mercs, really big regulars. Bulgaria also has a lot of troops, and we actually get our army defeated, and then we have to fall back a little bit into Bosnia. We got a really strong push through Serbia. We acquired, we sieged down a lot of forts, and then we get pushed back to Bosnia. Inside Bosnia, we kind of just hide, get our troops back up. We recruit up conscripts or we raise our conscripts, or our levies rather, for the first time in forever. We bring them over, we get our troops to re-recruit. It's quite painful on the manpower, but we were kind of floating a pretty big bank. And then we eventually push back out and into our opponents, and eventually kind of dust them up as they start spreading out to siege a little bit. We start picking them off a little bit. If they just all stacked, then we would just run past them and kind of siege down some other stuff, and we get some pretty good stuff in terms of what's going on. I think the reason we lost some of these battles also is because of initiative. We are using handgunners, and handgunners have really good stats, but they don't get into the fight that quickly, and I think initiative is really strong early on. The thing is, this handgunners is what we have the upgraded H2 unit for, and it's the only unit we have H2 units for, so we're going to be using the handgunners, and I think they had guys with more initiative, so they'd get on the front faster, and then once they get on the front, our guys kind of single file into them a little bit, which we can tolerate if they're not doing a lot of damage. But if they have guys like crossbowmen or a ton of cavalry, which might have been the case, then they really kind of dust us up, because we were looking at the fight and we're like, oh yeah, we win that, and then we didn't win that, and it wasn't even a terrain thing, because we have the terrain, dice advantage map mode, and we checked it, we're like, that probably looks okay, and then it wasn't okay. So we seize from Serbia basically all of these locations in the north, and all these locations in the south. I think we had taken 1 or 2 before in a different war, but the idea is we want to link up by land all the way with this Vadim subject that we have all the way over here, and then we feed most of it to Vadim. I think Bosnia has 1 or 2 locations. Most of it goes to Vadim, though, and then we take these down in the south in Serbia, because we want to be able to march all the way down here. Remember, we did get this subject here in Epirus, who I think we feed 1 province to from the Byzantines. We got this quite a long time ago from Naples in like kind of a Diplo interaction, and it's been kicking around ever since, and eventually we're going to feed it like a lot of Greece if we end up taking it. And so this is kind of what shakes out in terms of the this war here. We see our note says Upper Macedonia from Biz to Epirus, and most of Vadim to Vadim. Now, with what's going on, we had meant to take 1 more location inward on Bosnia, but we didn't, or sorry, on Serbia, which is a bit of a shame. They have really, really good resources, but we do manage to nab a gold from them, so that is going to be quite nice. But I think this is right here, where we grab this province in here, and you can see there's a silver up there, so we don't grab that, womp womp. But Vadim, it extends all the way to this lumber and wine, or lumber and cotton, and we feed Vadim also from Bulgaria all the way to this gold. So at least we get the gold over there, and then this northern portion we have fed mostly to Vadim, but also a little of it has gone over to Bosnia. So we're making some progress here, mainly just kind of empowering our subjects, playing a little small ball, and you notice we kind of have 3 to 4 spheres of war opened up. That way we are constantly taking down the antagonism, right? We have this kind of sphere of, in the Balkans, where we'll mainly piss off Balkan people when we fight there. We have, of course, Italy, where we're fighting quite a lot, and we have Morocco as the main one, but also newly opened up is kind of this sphere in Anatolia, where the Mamluks aren't going to care about any of our other wars, and so we're not taking max war score every war, but we're taking an amount where we will not generate a coalition while simultaneously spreading it out at this point over the over 4 different regions. I just want to say briefly about this kind of scrum we subjugated in the middle. I think, generally speaking, we don't have enough war score to do that all in one kind of war resolution, but because you can separate peace, you can get kind of way more than you should be able to. And in my opinion, the way it should work is if we separate peace Pisa, and this costs 30 war score, then the next kind of thing that we do should only have a war score cap of 70. So when we go to subjugate Siena, let's say they cost 30, and we go from 70 cap to 40 cap, and then we go to subjugate Florence. And subjugating Florence, because they're the really big one, let's say it costs 50 or 60, we now can't afford it. But when you have kind of this like Italian scrum, and you just co-belligerize a whole bunch of people, you can just annex everyone and avoid any kind of consequences, really, in terms of antagonism, because all the people who generated the antagonism are now gone, or they're your subjects. And so I do think that the way that, like, war score cost works when it's distributed amongst small and medium-sized countries is really kind of, the separate CB allows you to effectively generate more war score than you ought to be able to. And I think that this is maybe like something that allows for really explosive stuff that's like kind of just doesn't really seem like it should be a thing. And in particular, you feel it really hard with Germany. Once you're militarily strong enough to handle a lot of extra participants, you just co-CB a whole bunch and you just do a bunch of separate pieces. If you want to kind of just go bananas, you can. But with that said, this is the point where we really start popping off. And we finish the annexation on Ferrara. And Ferrara is a whole nother ton of locations. We have, remember, kind of like around here, and then Ferrara adds to us all of this, and then a whole bunch of this coast. So that is quite a lot for us. We also have this kind of territory over here, but this represents an enormous amount for us. We go up to 1.7 million pops at this point in time, and then we also go out of our way to accept a million, not a million pops, although we do accept a million pops, I mean a million the culture, because this is what a lot of Ferrara is. In theory, we would like to annex the people who are Lombard in a million first, because this is where we have our culture capacity spent. We are at 2.26 out of 2.5, so not too strained. And then with this, or I think slightly before this, I'm not sure if it was with this or slightly before this, or I think it was we became a GP before this, and then once we gave away territory to our subjects following that war, we dipped out of being a GP. But the point is, once Ferrara is annexed, we're super into being a GP, and with GP, we get extra Diplo capacity. So now we're at 5.87, but instead of being out of 5.25, it's out of 7.26. And then we also, now that we're above 1.5 million pops, can go up to the kingdom rank, which gives us an additional additional Diplo capacity. So now it's out of 10.29. So Diplo capacity as a resource is now super wide open for us, and so we are thrilled. So now we can have a lot more little subjects. However, if we have really powerful subjects, they are going to get really disloyal, which is kind of what ends up happening to us as time goes on. We increase the barks that are patrolling here from 60 to 100, and we switch our cabinet action. Instead of integrating, which we were doing, we finished integrating Genoa, and then we switched to encourage urbanization. And encourage urbanization at the base value gives you plus 30 pop promotions. Remember, we have 10 base, we have plus 10 off of the library, and plus 10 off of the university. Encourage urbanization does require a tech, so this is a significant barrier to entry, but when we have over 100% cabinet climate efficiency, which we kind of generally do. This is an additional 60 flat pop promotion, effectively tripling our pop promotion speed, right? And this is in all locations. It's not in a specific area, it's in all locations. So we ditch integration and go for that, with the idea that the remaining of stuff that we have that's not integrated, like a little bit of Croatia here, and I think also a little bit of Serbia down here, we are owning directly. We're eventually going to feed that to a vassal. I think we end up feeding pieces of Serbia over to our subject here in Greece, in fact, and so that is what we're going to be going to, but our income goes down. So I'm not sure exactly what it is, because I think we might have added military, but we are not receiving the subject income per hour that we were before, and that subject income does not scale our income up at all. Instead, we're getting more tax income. But as we increase the tax base, this increases the expense of all of our sliders. So as we make more money from the taxes, everything gets more expensive, and we're paying the building maintenance on all of the Ferraran buildings that we had newly acquired, and we have less crown power. Remember, we got up to 21% crown power before, and now our crown power is, I don't have the record of what it was, but I think it dips under 21% here with the annexation of Ferrara. So it's a bit of an interesting tension where, okay, having Ferrara helps us to pop off in a lot of these regards, because we have this extra capacity for a Diplo and this type of thing, and we can replace Ferrara as a subject and get subject income from other people, but we don't instantly make more money despite increasing the size of our country by like 50%. And so because we are generating so much income through trade, I think it's the decrease in crown power plus additional maintenance, stuff like this here. But it is quite a bit of an interesting phenomenon. We pop off in one regard, but not in the actual income regard. Being a GP also allows us to build more of these trading posts in more of these countries. So now basically all of Maghreb and all of like all the way over to the Mamluks in countries like I think a little bit in like countries like Aragon, but like not Castile, we are able to build these trade post buildings or these overseas trade post buildings or trade offices. So that is going to be quite nice for us. We also go for a parliamentary declare on Morocco. We have a couple territories here in our subject of Fez. Granada is a subject of them, but we go for a parliamentary declare on them, and Florence does something funny. Florence is disloyal, and they end up taking the war goal, because they can separate CB when they're disloyal, but Florence doesn't have access to the sea, so a little bit of an interesting strategy from Florence. We're super okay with it because it doesn't generate antagonism from us, but okay, that is a little bit of an interesting situation. This is also going to be a coalition war, and with that, we subjugate the rest of the Italian miners that were part of that coalition. I think there's one or two over here. Maybe I think Urbino and one other one are still free. But for the most part, we are kind of filling in the gaps and getting everyone underneath our thumb. We decide to take Moroccan Iberia as well in here. So the portion of Morocco that is in Iberia, we take it and we start selling it to Granada. For the first territory, they give us 400 ducats, and we're selling it to Granada since Granada is not our direct subject. We want to give it to them, but we can't give it to them because they're not a direct subject, but we can sell it to them instead. We also release a new country that is going to have a claim here, and Marrakesh down here. And Marrakesh has claims all throughout here, whereas that other new country just has one little claim over here. So we're going to look to get two countries that have levers on Morocco and be a little bit more conservative, but look to slowly take out Morocco here, as well as part of our bigger strategy. Although I think this is the last time we declare war on Morocco kind of in this phase. In 1427, I think this is a new thing. We get negative antagonism with people who are enemies of the nation, and also since we bricked the coalition, people aren't as hesitant to ally us, and because we have a bunch of extra Diplo capacity, we decide to ally Castile. This will make our life a little bit easier, although our life is pretty easy at this point. It is at this point our life gets hard. We run into problems with lumber, both lumber and food, and we are at a point where we have sufficient amounts of trade that our burghers do annoying things. When you generate trade capacity, often the ways in which you generate it, it also gives a bunch of trade capacity to the burghers as well. The burghers will just trade whatever they want, and when you have a ton of capacity, eventually they're like, hey, we have a surplus of lumber, let's trade it away. Well, lumber is something you want to collapse the price of. And so we try importing more lumber, but then our burghers just export more. And so what we have to do is we have to hunker down and lumber down and try and expand our lumber capacity. Fortunately, the lumber mill building it only costs 5 ducats in our subjects, so we build a ton of those in our subjects. Really, truly, masonry, lumber mill, 50 ducat buildings. They don't have any input goods, so you can't make them cheaper. It's just an absolute godsend that we can build them in our subjects to depress the price of stuff like lumber, especially because we don't care about generating money off the lumber mill. It's all about controlling the price of lumber, so this is so free when we build it in our subjects. We also expand out the lumber mill as much as we can, but this is a weird idiosyncrasy. We also run into food issues, and we try and import rice to solve this, and it's food because we have a ton of pops and we have a ton of urbanization, and lo and behold, the burghers also export the rice as well. So this is a little bit frustrating, but we go about doing all the means that we have and we've talked about for increasing our food production, which is stacking irrigation, food RGOs, food villages, and also the sheep production as well. All 4 of those stacked together, you have a bunch of additive and multiplicative modifiers, and it feels quite strong. We also get meritocracy from Egypt. We don't have an Egypt tab open, but eventually through trade that we were intentionally doing, coming from the south, coming all the way up to Venice, we do gain access to meritocracy. Meritocracy's got to have a few important techs for us. The most important one is one that gives plus 10 power projection. So again, we're going to be able to build these trade offices in more territories and continue to expand our trade income and our trade capacity really, really aggressively. We also gain access to 2.5% trade efficiency, which is a huge trade efficiency modifier, and 2% tax efficiency, which is a modest tax efficiency modifier. And also by unlocking the meritocracy, what we gain access to is a slightly faster research speed as well, without even needing to do anything for it. So we do that. We also, just generally speaking, in regards to the food, the way we look at it, not the RGOs, but the buildings, so the villages and also the sheep, we expand these mostly in our subjects because it's minus 90% cost, and we don't want the food because we want to sell it. It's not the ducat value we care about. We care about increasing the amount of food that is in our market. We also, running another parliament, again, just always in this location here, because we're looking to push the dev up, get the sponsor a university debate, which is a bit of an interesting one because it gives you 0.5 trend towards innovation. With this, you can use a cabinet action to get another like +3, and then we have +3 base, and you end up having like over 1 trend towards innovation. So with that, we get roughly 6 additional points towards innovation, which is really, really nice. So following that, I don't think we needed the Parliament CB because I think we had the CB for Camoa. We decide to subjugate Milan. And after this, I don't think they had any allies. We have all of northern Italy basically under our thumb at this point. I think there was, during the fight with Morocco, we subjugated Urbino and this guy here, and I think that's it. I think that's everyone. I think it's this guy, and other than that, all of this is either subjugated or directly owned by us, except for the Papal States and Naples here. We have everyone under our thumb, so things have been really consolidated, but at the same time here, we are starting to really run into negative loyalty by virtue of our subjects being too strong in relation to us. So this is going to throttle us and slow us down unless we overexpand military, but we can't really afford it, or I don't want to spend that many ducats for it. I think developing a little bit more internally is more valuable, and if we get the loyalty too low, we won't be able to annex anyone, and if we can't annex anyone, we can't decrease their power relative to ours, and so this does slow us down. We do finish an annexation in Gorzia, so that's above these Aquileia. Sorry for the pronunciation, there is another power, and so we do annex them, and so that is going to be a bit nice for us, and then this is going to decrease the relative subject power just a little bit. We also go and we vassalize Croatia. We'd taken a little bit of dirt off Croatia, so it's not like they were very big, and from Croatia, remember that we had that additional territory from Serbia that we had additional territory like up here that wasn't integrated, or wasn't integrated. We feed that back to Croatia. I think some of it we might even took off of Croatia, and so this is going to be nice for us. And we start our annexation on Florence. Florence is a little bit inland. We can't push that much control that way, but it is going to be nice eventually once we get roads, which we are kind of coming up on our ability to get roads. And so Florence a little bit more internal. We aren't going to be able to push that much control. We might even decrease in income when we finish the annexation, but really we're going to pop off super hard when we get roads. I think that we have somewhere in here a note regarding Modena. Yeah, in Modena, which is right here, at this current juncture, we own Modena. Modena has 44 control and 34 proximity in a couple of years from now. And so this is what we're talking about, is this Florentine territory. We're really not going to be able to have this enormous amount of control here, because 44 control, 34 proximity, it's not the best. So if we have like 40 proximity, it's just 40 control here, it might end up decreasing our income. So, but the timing window, Florence is going to finish probably around the time we're getting the roads. So I think the timing window is pretty good. Okay, so now the year is 1432. So we're closing in on the end of the century here, which is what the time block of this video is going to be. We go from 98 barks to 125, and we double our galleys from 15 to 30. We haven't encountered too much resistance in regards to the galleys, or anyone really pushing navally. We see a lot of land armies, but not a lot of naval armies, which I found a little bit of a curiosity. But also, we made short work of Genoa pretty early, and we haven't fought Naples or Sicily. Sicily, on previous builds, we have seen Sicily with absolutely massive navies, but I think that was in a time where income was a lot more free. The AI, while the AI is a lot better at generating income, is still not generating all that much relative to previous versions, kind of the game. We are getting minus 45 relations, minus 45 loyalty for all subjects' power relative to Overlord. This is an enormous amount, and is making it so that we have to use special diplo interactions with our subjects, like increase loyalists, to be able to annex them, which I think we might be doing with Florence. So that is a bit of a vibe. In terms of our diplo capacity, we're at 9.25 out of 11.34 after subjugating Croatia here. Our income is fluctuating at this point from the negative to plus 50, and part of this is because we added a bit of army so that we could increase our power relative to our subjects, so that we could bring down this malice. And so you're seeing how we're annexing stuff and we're really kind of churning, and we took all of North Italy, but like, are we stronger here? Not really, but the idea I had is that once we have roads, this gets way better for us, or once we have paved roads. And so we're hoping that is kind of coming to bear. But also, if something happens and we can somehow slot out Zonta, that'll also help out quite a bit. So we're hoping that works out. We're at 19% crown power, and so again, under our peak of 19%, and we go on to extra tax from Parliament. And at this point, our income is 217. So remember, a little while back, we hit the 250s. And so part of this is also increased building costs. Our trade routes per trade route are getting less and less profitable because we're getting more and more trade. I think we need new markets. We need more trade range. And we also need more proximity to bring up our control, so our crown powers, so that we're not suffering from the tax efficiency malice to crown power. And also so we're getting a bigger chunk of the trade power, the trade profit in our pocket, because trade income scales directly with crown power. And so if we can increase proximity of roads, we can increase crown power, and we can get more income. So one tool that we use to kind of help manage all this nastiness we're running into at the end of the age here is the interaction market access preference, where this is a economic action and it gives plus 30 relations. And we care about the plus 30 relations, and this is all we care about. But what it does is it gives everyone a bonus towards being into your market. And so let's say Provence was in the Avignon market, which the Papal States didn't make this game. Very often they they have been making it in the past, but they didn't make it this game. But let's say Provence is in the Avignon market. If we give them market access preference, they might get pulled into the Genoa market because it gives additional points towards pulling people towards your markets. So this is the use of it, but the side effect of it is plus 30 relations. So we do this with all of our subjects who are in our markets anyways, because they have a preference for our market base. To be fair, if they were on the very edge of things, like I think we have Salzburg up here in Germany that is subjugated, and maybe portions of Salzburg are in the Nuremberg market. I don't think they are, but if they were, they would get pulled into our Venetian market instead. But the reason we're doing it is the plus 30 relations. So this kind of eases things up a little bit for us. We also start annexing Mantua. We cannot annex Verona for forever. At this point, I think there's still like minus 300 relations or something like this. It is really rough, so that is going to take forever. And we have a little bit of a comparison. Bohemia is at this point the next highest income in the entire game. We have more income, and we have more income than Koch Timur, and we have more income than the biggest Chinese nation, which we can see courtesy of Marco Polo's expedition. And so we have a bit of a comparison here. Our tax base is 869 at this point in time, and again, just in terms of our territory, we have kind of this territory around here, all the way down to Ferrara, and then a little bit alongside this coast, and this is what we have in terms of terrain. Bohemia has a tax base of 908. I do think Bohemia has a smaller tax base than the biggest Chinese nation, but they have a slightly bigger tax base than us. We are still generating more income than them. We'll get to that. We have 5.5k troops. Bohemia has 18k troops. So we definitely want to avoid a tussle with Bohemia. If we got into a fight, we would probably have to use a lot of mercenaries and look to defend alongside really defendable areas, because this is really rough terrain, and so we would probably look to play a defensive fight if the AI were going to play intelligently, which, you know, they don't necessarily do that, but this is our bulwark here. If we were to fight Bohemia, because Bohemia is just a little bit north of us, so we're trying not to tangle with Bohemia or anything like this. We are getting 618 ducats a month in terms of income. Now, this isn't net, this is just income. Bohemia, who is the second highest, is getting 526. So at this juncture, we have more income than anyone else, but we also are spending a whole lot. And our biggest expenditure, in terms of sliders, if I recall correctly, is our Diplo capacity slider, which is keeping the loyalty of our guys high. So we are paying a lot for this subject expand, in which we've seized all of North Italy and not needed to integrate it by hand, which we are worse at doing because we are a merchant republic. So like, it might seem like we have a lot of advantages here conquering North Italy in this like frame of time and just kind of having the biggest income and stuff like this, but we might not have as big a margin as Bohemia. I don't know what Bohemia's margin is, but they're not spending as much on Diplo capacity as us, probably not, although they're probably spending a lot more than most people because they do start out with a ton of subjects, so that is going to be a little bit of a vibe from them. In terms of our income, we waited a few months, and then for our income breakdown, we were making 638 ducats, so a little bit more, and then we were getting 51, or at 19% crown power, I think this is what this note says. We had 51 coming from minting, 275 coming from tax, 208 from trade. So remember, earlier on, trade was a bigger source of income than us from tax, and I do think we need to access new markets. I think we've dried up a lot of profitable trade opportunities, and getting additional trade range, especially gaining access to the east, would do us a lot of good. And we are also getting plus 100 from Diplo. I think some of this is from war reparations at this point, maybe, but a lot of this is just from our subjects. Remember, we're building in our subjects. We've kind of slowed the brakes as our subjects have gotten too powerful relative to us, but we're building in our subjects because it's dirt cheap, and this is an advantage that we have, and it's an advantage that causes a little bit of tension. We become, at the turn of the new age, cultural and diplo hegemon. Just instantly, cultural hegemon will allow us to assimilate area. We're almost certainly going to start using that right away to decrease our pressure on our cultural capacity, and also allow us to culture convert faster, which is going to allow us to core more territories, this type of stuff. Especially as these integrations of both Florence and Mantua finish, we are going to need to accept the culture that is down in Florence, because I do not think they are currently accepted. Neither Tuscan nor Mediano are accepted, limited. We only accept Lombard, Emilian, and Venetian, and Friulian. And we also would like to accept Croatian and Slovene, I think, at some point in time. Notably, the Diplo hegemon gives plus 30% relations improvement speed, and so this is going to be nice for keeping relations of everyone high, and also avoiding the people all getting mad at us, the coalitions. We have been, for the most part, avoiding coalitions. We had one coalition war that we started, but it was really just Morocco and a bunch of miners, and so we haven't had any sort of big coalitions, and a big part of this is improving relations with everyone. We're spending a lot of Diplo capacity. This gives us a lot of Diplo. We went Diplo focus last age, and so that was giving us additional relation speed. I think that we have plus 20% there. We have plus 30% from the hegemon, so we're going to be in pretty good shape for keeping relations high, and so this is going to be nice for us for avoiding, for example, Bohemia in their 18k stack army, which is quite a bit bigger than ours. They just have to be making more money than us to be able to support an 18k army, or a bigger margin than us, because we're just sinking so much into the subject Diplo. But as our annexations come off, we could even decrease our Diplo slider if we really wanted to. Although it is, we would probably just rather have more subjects, I think. What we choose for this age, for our focus, is actually admin group focus. And the reason we go for it is there's 3 techs in particular that we were interested in, and that is going to be minus 10% building cost, minus 10% urban building cost, and we already have Gothic architecture from Venetians. It might even be in the Tinto flavor here, where we get a tech that gives us minus 10% either urban or building cost, and the more of this we can stack, the better it is, just because of math. And so it doesn't look like they show us off the tech here, which is a little bit unfortunate, but we do have access to a tech from Venice that gives us this decreased cost. We have an additional minus 20% cost from us having 100 capital economy, so I think we're already at minus 30%, and then after this we'll be at minus 50%, right? And then effectively an additional minus 10% for us, relatively speaking, is minus 20%. And this only applies to us building in our own territory, which maybe we're just supposed to build another territory anyways, and we have been doing a lot of our construction in subjects right before we finish annexing them in order to have a bunch of buildings, but this is something we went for. And also plus 25% trade capacity. So maybe this is what where we were thinking that the extra trade capacity was on, where we were talking about it earlier. And so we will have 175% trade capacity. And so we will eventually be able to kind of really pop off as we get into this next age, I think. But we are going to be concluding the video here. We played one full age, quite a bit of a detailed AAR. I'm not sure if we want to run another 50 years or something like this. If you really want to see another 50 years, comment below. If you'd rather see another nation the first 100 years, comment below. I think it'll take me about the same amount of time to do the next 50 years as it does the first 100 years, something like this. But we could see how we're able to pop off and integrate more of Italy. Probably where this is going is into fighting the Papal States in Naples, and gaining control of the rest of Italy, while simultaneously starting to expand more in Greece, going after Morocco, and probably trying to fight multiple wars simultaneously, which is what happens when you want to open up multiple fronts and you want to avoid too much antagonism. And what I mean by avoiding too much antagonism is we're not taking max antagonism in each of these wars, looking to still stay below coalition, looking to play some moves, probably look to expand into Anatolia as well, because we do have this lever in Cilicia, which is going to be nice. Probably don't want to tangle with the Mamluks, but these are going to be kind of our options. And then, of course, we will also, speaking of the Mamluks, or thinking through the Mamluks, we're also going to be, or not the Mamluks, the Morocco, we're also going to be able to start, colonization, exploration, these types of things, which I think is really going to be an area in which Venetia gets a ton of return on investment, partially because we're stacking like subject modifiers anyways, and so this is going to make colonies better, but also because the way you extract a lot of value from the colonies is with trade. We have a ton of bonuses for trade. So I think this makes a lot of sense and is going to be interesting to see maybe what the power level differences are if people want to see this. I think the other nation we would play next would be Poland. And so, I think that is going to be where we kind of finish out this, or we haven't played, so we don't have more notes regarding further play into this age here. Actually, we do have one last thing to say, which is regarding trade advantage. We were really trying to gain control of markets, but we weren't like sinking our nation to do it. I think that our barks aren't making the return on investment. I think our trade ships just are not worth it, and this is maybe something that should be kind of examined regarding some of these merchant republics, because I think this is supposed to be the gameplay pattern, and so maybe they should have more power on their light ships specifically. But in regards to Naples, I think that Naples has at this point like 50 trade advantage, and in the Naples market off of all of our buildings, as well as the maritime we spread off of the northern Naples, because now our maritime is spread basically all the way to kind of this this outlet here. We are at like 35 or 40, so we're pretty close to gaining control over the Naples market via maritime advantage. But I'm thinking that we're probably going to end up gaining control of them the second we take any territory from them, just by virtue of a couple locations with a couple marketplaces, and they're also being denied that. That's probably when we end up getting control. It would have been really satisfying if we had been able to gain control through all of our efforts before taking any dirt off of them, and in doing so being able to control the outgoing trades that are coming out of Naples, or have the first crack at the outgoing trades, which would have been nice. I honestly don't think it's also that valuable. I think the places that are valuable would be like, for us, would be like Egypt, maybe even Tunis, something like this, but we're not that close there. Also, just want to note, we have like with virtually every market in the Mediterranean, because of our trade stuff, we have the investment was really low because the buildings were really cheap, but we have between like 5 and 10 trade capacity. I think we have close to 200 in Venice, but we have that spread over like every market of the Mediterranean, which I think is quite substantive, and this, you know, is the idea of how we're supposed to play as the Merchant Republic. But if you like this video, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, you know, hit the notification bell, do the YouTube algorithm. If you wanted to support the channel in particular, and you are going to be ordering EU5, you can go to the official store and check out with our code Generalist. It doesn't make it any cheaper for you, but it does send 12% of the sale our way, which would be greatly appreciated. If you are ordering anyways, don't go out of your way, and like if you weren't gonna buy the game like early, or like you're not interested, or you want to see how things go, don't do this just to do the thing. But it would be helpful if you are going to be doing it anyways in a way that is zero cost to you, other than some inconvenience, because you will be emailed the code and then have to enter in that code. But with that said, that's what we've done as Venice. Very interesting, plays quite a bit different, has much different advantages, much slower on the expansion. I think we were kind of pushing the expansion a little bit faster than what maybe would have felt natural, just because we were kind of trying to expand at a speed that was normal for a kingdom, and so but like I think that you don't have that much speed. I think we kind of got punished for some of our expansion. We really wish we had crown power. We really hate that, you know, this thing is bugged, but yeah, I think we've said what we wanted to say, other than we hate Zonta, and so with that said, I hope we already said we hope you enjoyed. So you guys have a good one. Bye-bye now.